All right. So, for decades, there have been many serial killers throughout history. And the one that caught most people's eyes was Ted Bundy. He lived around here, he preyed on multiple women, and even some of them escaped. The term serial killer wasn't even a known word until the crimes of Ted Bundy were happening. There was about 20 identified women, but we don't know, or we assumingly don't know, that there's more. Because when he died, he said that there was more numbers at the end of what the prosecutors told him that they had. So this all started when, when Ted Bundy was born. When he was born, he was believing that his mother was his older sister and that his grandparents were his parents. This was very common in the 80s in unwed marriages, because she had the child and then the father dipped out. So he was fatherless, thought his sister was his mother was his sister, and his grandparents his parents. He wasn't very popular around his neighborhood. He was always like the weird kid that nobody understood, because he was always around the other kids. He was always trying to hang out, but they weren't always liking him. So he was sort of the outcast. But that didn't really stop him. He still was very popular in high school in the aspect of people made fun of him a lot. So he had friends, but not a lot of them. He went to college at the University of Washington, and he went there for a psychology major, and he was also a Republican campaigner. So in the span of him being in college, he got his psychology degree, and he was also in practice for a Republican campaign. In college, he met a woman named Stephanie Brooks. He was infatuated with her, so they dated for a while, but then unexpectedly they broke up. So with this, she was sort of the template for all the women that he murdered because of her physique and all of that, her long hair, her slender body, all of that. They noticed that all the women that he murdered had the template of Stephanie Brooks. So while he may not have had the easiest life, he still had friends and family. He had, the attention he was given was not enough for him, and he wanted more. So, from 1974 to 1978, 16 young women were brutally murdered, raped, and tortured by him. This proved to be quite a chase, because from Seattle, Washington to Tallahassee, Florida, in the span of those 4 years, those 16 women were murdered.
4 women a year.
So each crime that he committed with these women started off with him faking an injury. He would either have an arm sling, a cast, and with that he would ask the women to help him with the task. Either something for them to get in his car, to help him get gas, or to help him move stuff into his car. So with this, the women were sort of obligated, I guess, because they saw a crippled man and wanted to help. So many of the victims were either sexually assaulted by various objects or by him and then later strangled to death. Investigators eventually found that he would leave the nude bodies of the women in Taylor Mountains in Washington. Okay, so with all that, on January 4th, 1974, there was a woman named Joni Lenz. She became one of the few women anyway, to survive his brutal attacks. She was assaulted by a bedpost from him, and that left her physically and mentally damaged. He typically strangled or bludgeoned his victims, as well as mutilating them after death. He then prolonged the events by returning to visit the corpses at the dump site to take them home in order to gain some sort of sexual advantage towards the corpses. He would even leave the decapitated heads in his apartment for various amounts of time just so he can get that extra thrill. So with all of that happening, without the consequences that we have now, people would be free to do whatever they want to do. But since there are, Ted Bundy got what was coming to him. In 1976, the first trial against the aggravated kidnapping of Carol DeRoche. Alright, so the trial against him with the aggravated kidnapping, the Colorado police were confident that they had enough information to convict him. Not wanting to drag out another trial, Ted Bundy decided to act as his own attorney. This led him to have access, or this led him to persuade the court system to let him have access to the public library to practice his case. He then, in turn, escaped out a window and, in turn, brutally assaulted and killed 3 other women in Florida University. So during the second trial, after he got captured for the second time, after he got captured for the University of Florida women, he was prosecuted for them, as well as being sentenced to death by electric chair. His third and final trial, he denied self-representation and settled for a defense attorney who pled not guilty by means of insanity. On February 7th, 1980, 1 month after the trial, he was found guilty by means of electrocution. This was something of excitement for people around the community because they were finally safe and sound from a serial killer that was after young women. It took many years for justice to finally be served for those who were caught at the wrong place at the wrong time. Ted Bundy was a very sick man who found pleasure in the torturous killing of young women. And without fail, he was able to escape from police and continue his killings. This was a time of fright for the nation, but when he died, people were joyous. That finally, quote, the monster had been removed from the earth.